As there is growing demand from diplomatic community and foreign media to the International Center of Policy Studies to explain the scandal yesterday with attack on our office from Prosecutor General and Security Service of Ukraine offices, I would like shortly to describe what happened and why it all happened. I returned yesterday from the Washington DC, where I participated at the off-the-record roundtable at Carnegie Endowment, and also I had a number of meetings in different US government institutions. Immediately after I returned, our office was attacked by more than 15 different groups from different institutions, from Prosecutor General Office, from Security Service of Ukraine, who without any permission, by breaking the door, entered our office and broke the door, locked it and damaged it physically. And during 5 hours, the whole team of the ICPS and other organizations which are located at the office on Institutska 14 in the center of Kiev, we were victim of absolutely lawless examinations, pressure and demand for documents. All our computers were taken by this group of officers. The reason was more than strange. As I understand, the reason was my visit to the US, during which I presented a document which the center and myself we developed over the last basically 2 years. I would say even that we started to promote ideas of peaceful settlement of the conflict with Russia starting from March 2014, and for last year we have been focusing on unlocking Donbas conflict settlement Minsk process, and we prepared in the framework of a special project which has been financed by Soros Foundation in Ukraine. We prepared a report which is called International Interim Administration in Donbas as a way to settle the conflict on the east of our country. And it was exactly the text which I presented in the US, and it was received with huge interest as probably the only one alternative to current deadlock which exists in implementation of Minsk agreements. The key ideas which we promote are basically very simple and reflecting conclusions from current peacekeeping, peacemaking wisdom science, which analyzed which kind of methods in conflict settlement work and which don't. The idea is very simple. We have now point A, where the territory not controlled by Ukrainian government is under control of so-called DPR, LPR, and we have point B, where it should be returned to Ukraine. This is the substance of Minsk agreement, and how it should be done is explained very simple in Minsk agreements. It should be done by 3 conditions. Our parliament has to adopt changes to the constitution with special status to Donbas, give amnesty to combatants on the eastern part of our country, and to conduct elections. Basically, these 3 conditions are important, but they will not allow Ukraine to regain sovereignty, as there is no any way to ensure that enormous amount of arms, all these fighters which are now on the side of DPR, LPR, that they will all voluntarily give up arms, and local administration, which is now basically created by separatists, or as we in Ukraine call them, terrorists, that it will be changed. Obviously, it will be a kind of continuation of current situation on not controlled territories, and what we proposed is just to introduce additional element which doesn't contradict to Minsk, which can supplement Minsk, and by which there should be international interim transitional administration, quite normal instrument in international peacemaking practice, when between point A and point B there is additional element when both sides recognize and respect legitimacy of international administration. This administration is not just peacekeeping, it's also police, law enforcement, ensuring all the elements of governance on these territories. And during a certain period of time, 1 or 2 years, it could lead to removal of current vacuum of law, rule of law, order and security on this territory. It could legitimize and review, restore normal contacts between not controlled and controlled territories, which would allow in peaceful manner take back arms from these groups of separatists, and it could allow by peaceful means for Ukrainian ministries, departments, Central Electoral Committee to have access to the territory, and which would allow in a certain period of time to have already legitimate elections, which then would lead to restoration of real sovereignty of Ukraine on these territories. It has happened in many cases, in many conflicts. The best example which we use in our research is the conflict in Croatia, Eastern Slavonia, when a UN administered operation called ANTAS allowed in 2 years to disarm separatists, to restore normal relations between not controlled and controlled territories, and parallels between conflict in Croatia and current conflict on the east of Ukraine are very, very similar, starting from amnesty up to restoration of legal, legitimate relationships between capital and the region which is not under control. So on the basis of this experience, we developed what should be done and how it should be done. Basically, the key element here is that it should be initiative from Ukrainian side, because conflict is obviously on our territory and we have to be in driving seat of conflict settlement. It should get support from, first of all, US and Russia as the two key players in UN Security Council. It should probably lead to review of UN Security Council resolution on conflict settlement in Ukraine. And on the basis of these legal documents, it could lead to establishment of such kind of international interim administration, which would first of all stop human sufferings on contact line on not controlled territories, which would stop killings and deaths from side of Ukrainian army, and we witness every day that there is continuation of fighting. It would lead to restoration of Ukrainian sovereignty in quite foreseeable period of time. 2-3 years is absolutely possible period of time when Ukraine would be able to fully restore its control over the territory. And there is a number of arguments which allow us to see that it would be win-win-win for every side of this conflict, for Ukraine, for international community, for another side of the conflict, which is obviously not separatist, but Russia, which is supporting them. So as for us, it's the best possible way to settle the conflict, and as experts in international relations, we have been promoting and explaining to all the stakeholders, including Ukrainian parliamentarians, Ukrainian government. I would like to remind that this project has been financed by Soros Foundation, and beneficiary is Ministry of Temporary Occupied Territories. So we published a number of articles, we published these books, and we were working in absolute transparent and legal way. But probably our activities irritated those who are not interested in stopping this conflict, who benefit from this conflict. And they probably ordered this lawless attack on our office, which is really shock. Even in the worst time in Ukrainian history, even during Yanukovych time, never anyone from law enforcement bodies attacked analytical center. When this group started to make its lawless actions, I proposed that I personally, as a leader of this study, able to come to Prosecutor General office and to give all the explanations and so on, but it didn't really interest attackers. They blocked the doors, they didn't allow any lawyer to get in, which is direct violation of Ukrainian legislation, international norms. Despite some people felt very bad, and emergency arrived, ambulance arrived to our office, they blocked both lawyers, emergency, ambulance, they blocked everything and everyone. They used physical force to to intimidate people in this office to take documents which are publicly available, to take computers which have absolutely nothing to hide. The reason of this absolutely ridiculous and understandable attack, I think Ukrainian government has to give. It has been linked to plans famous as Artemenko plan. It was linked to ideas which has been reflected by People's Deputy Member of Ukrainian Parliament, Mr. Artemenko, and I explained everyone that it's just ridiculous and impossible, because the first my meeting with Mr. Artemenko after a long period of time, after probably 3 years when we didn't had any meeting, the first meeting was in second half of February, when already a month the whole of the world was reading about his peaceful ideas. But even if it was a case, which was not, but even if it was a case, there is no crime for analytical center to talk to shareholders, and members of parliament are obviously the key shareholder here, the key participant in policy-making process. There is no crime in discussing with them and giving them our texts which are publicly available. So it's quite difficult to understand the logic and reasons which led to this horrible attack, but as for me, the very fact that this attack was allowed is outcrying and demands international attention and reaction. It is absolutely unacceptable when public authorities attack analytical centers. It's absolutely unacceptable when violence and force is used against people, when 5 hours 40 people are in hostages. All the teams of different organizations which are located in this office became basically hostages of this lawlessness. We were prohibited from all our citizens' rights during this attack. So I think that the international community has to give its assessment, its reaction, and by the way, it coincides with a number of other actions from current government, starting from attack on anti-corruption activists who are now forced to go through a procedure of electronic declaration of their assets, activities, and so on, which is ridiculous, which is only for public servants, and it's a kind of strike back against anti-corruption activists. We see attack on personalities of those who criticize the government. I am afraid it's a sign that we have authoritarian regime in Ukraine back. And it may not happen even under the slogans of European integration, because these actions are directly in contradiction with European integration, or even if it is with slogans of fight against Russia, because what is happening is exactly Russia. It's Putin regime, but only with different faces. What is the difference when human rights are disrespected, when human dignity is humiliated, but it's done with slogans that we fight against Putin? I think that government may not misuse this anti-Russian rhetoric in order to violate human rights of its citizens.